Okay. Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate then, so thanks everyone for joining today's session where we're going to be talking about product market fit and also how to make sense of it in your business's journey. So from what I understand, your businesses represent a range of different stages. So some of this is going to be completely new. Some of it will be a nice refresher. And for some people, it might provide that different perspective for you to approach this when you are running it in-house. So hopefully there'll be kind of content for a mixture of different businesses here. So you've got me until 11:30. And these are kind of like the four main areas that we're going to be covering. So first of all, we'll dig into what product market fit is. I'll talk to you about a few definitions, a few applications. And the main reason I do this is that it can either be a topic that's very overwhelming or incredibly fluffy. There doesn't seem to be kind of like that middle mark. I'll then talk about how you can go on to achieve it. So only 58% of businesses actually go on to achieve product market fit. And the sole reason for that is that it is really, really difficult. So if you are finding this quite a challenge, you're not alone, other businesses are experiencing the same thing. So what I'll do is just introduce you to a few foundational steps that I use myself with my clients and I've used in-house as well, just to make sure that you're kind of following the recommended steps. And perhaps, again, I can give you a different perspective on things. Then we'll look at market validation. So this part will rely very heavily on the work of a guy called Brian Balfour. He has a 4-step process. Again, I've implemented this and I can talk you through how you might be able to release it or put it into your kind of business environment. But I can also talk to you about where I've made the mistakes in terms of application as well. And then we'll kind of finish on collecting and acting on customer feedback. So this part is quite short term, it's quite tactical. But again, I'm hoping that you'll be able to go back to the office and kind of rethink some of your kind of different kind of approaches. This is the only sales slide I will shove down your throats. So yes, I'm Lucy. I'm the director of Oh Blimey, and I work with B2B organizations, helping them to go to market and build repeatable marketing and growth processes. Sorry guys, we're just gonna pause it because we're not sure if the slides are moving.
Yeah, good. Sorry.
That's all right. Hey, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Yes, I'm the director of Oh Blimey. I work with B2B organizations, helping them to go to market. Over the years, I realized that I've been involved in the validation and launch of nearly 20 products and services, both from an in-house and a consultancy basis. And that has covered everything from a calendar app, sales training tool, online video platforms, recruitment technology. There's also been a bit of engineering and product services and also job boards. So there's kind of that mix. Before Oh Blimey though, I was working in-house for a startup based here in Cardiff. I joined as employee number 1. We had 1 customer and I was involved in growing that startup through to acquisition during COVID. So the reason why I'm mentioning that is a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking you through today, I've implemented, I've broken, but I also kind of empathize where you guys are. Like I do understand how hard this kind of process can be. So if I just go on to the first part, then what is product market fit? Anybody happy to take a stab at what they think it is before I kind of go into my spiel? So anyone from the chat?
If I have to, sorry, hi, Andrea from Empirics here. Hi. Actually, I have a sticker of your company on my laptop, funnily enough, because we met with Stack Week and I loved your stickers. So yeah, for me, if I have to summarize in a couple of words, what I think product market fit is towards the development of a product, you initially need to find a solution for a specific problem. So you
Mhm.
start with a problem solution fit, but then there is this huge question which you actually are currently facing in the development of our products, which is the product or the solution that you found, does it have a market? Is it serving a market which is big enough and is going to create a sustainable business model that generates revenue on a continuous basis? Because I might be solving a problem which everyone has, as in, you know, cleaning your desk from you spilling coffee, but is the market going to pay for it, or is it something that, you know, it's a problem that exists but is not big enough to pay a product or a solution to solve that problem, basically?
Yeah, that's bang on, to the point where I'm like, would you like to take over? Because that was brilliant. That was brilliant. Anybody? Oh, I can see a hand up as well. Just
Charles, want to take a stab?
no, that's all right. We'll come back to that one. We'll come back to that one. Out of interest, is there anyone on the program today that feels that they have it? Just literally just show of hands. No need to. No, cool. Anybody feel like they're on the cusp of it? Yep. Okay, we've got a hand. Okay, cool. Okay. It's interesting because I'll be asked what product market fit is, and for me, it's around confirming with absolute certainty that your offering works at every level for a customer. And when I say every level, I'm referring to products, customer, channel, market, and brand as well. It's kind of that collection. But I do have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the term, because I do think that there are some people that think it's all around hitting this revenue number or achieving a certain number of customers, and that takes away the emphasis about what it's actually all about. It's a process, it's iterative, and it's not a case of you hitting it and your work is done. There's so much more to it. So I've worked in businesses with product market fit and also those teams in the pursuit of it, but it wasn't until I joined the startup ecosystem and I was working for this business and there was an investor who was obsessed with it. Every meeting we had, he would bring out the term, to the point where it's a bit like, okay, you're a bit obsessed with this. But I realized that actually I need to kind of grapple around what it means from our perspective, so I know what our business needs to do to be able to reach it. So I don't know about you, but if you've ever looked into this, you'll notice that there are so many different articles and videos on it. There are particularly good ones by Y Combinator. There's also a lot of good work by people called Leah Farrin, Maya Voig, and there's a lot of kind of opinion around it. But when I kind of first started looking into seeing, okay, what does it mean to me? This was the first kind of step that made sense. So it's from LogRocket, and they say it's all around fulfilling the underserved needs of the target market in a way that can sustain growth and profitability. So that's kind of what Andrea said. That kind of makes sense, but it is a bit wordy. So I tried to make it a little bit more accessible to the layman, who is me. So how I see product market fit is it's all around the process of identifying a segment where people have a problem, they want to solve it, and they want to pay to solve it, and then subsequently building the solution that you can scale in a way that is profitable. Mark Andreasen, I'm certain you would have come up with his name if you ever kind of look at this as a topic. I don't know if he created the term, but he certainly kind of popularized it. And he says that if you've got product market, that you feel it, right? And he says it's when you're overwhelmed with usage to the point where you can't make any changes because you are swamped. You are just busy. It's good busy, but you are swamped. You're treading water. And then the last part that I find quite useful is this from Sean Ellis. This has to be something that you've come across. It's kind of one of those signals that suggests that you've got product market fit. To at least, if 40% of customers say they'd be disappointed if you were to take away your product or service, you in theory have product market fit. I think this is a good signal, but I do have problems with this articulation if you use it in isolation, you use it alone, but we will come back to my grumbling about that a bit later. I do find it useful though if you consider where it sits within kind of the broader scheme. So this is the growth process, right? And when we're looking at product market fit, we are looking at that middle column here, the transition phase. But what I'll do is just kind of give you an overview of each section so you can kind of sit there and work out where your business is. So the first one is the traction phase, which is also known as problem market fit. And this is all about identifying a problem, evidencing it, and designing some form of a value proposition that addresses customer needs and alleviates some pain. When we look at product market fit, this is all about evidencing that your value proposition is creating value and still alleviating that pain. But at this point, you have paying customers. You're building that traction, you're possibly testing, and you're ramping up activity. And then the last part is the growth phase, which is also known as platform market fit. And that is when, with certainty, you have a selection of services or products that can service the market as well. So these are kind of like the three different stages and where it sits. Now, so far I've kind of hit you with a load of theory. I'm just going to put a little spanner in the works here, because some people, myself included, have an issue with the term product market fit. And we actually think it should be switched. It should be market product fit. And the reason being is that if you lead with product, you are assuming that your product is the most important part of this. It's the sole focus. When in actual fact, we know it's the market that dictates the products. The market comes first. It's the market that will determine what you build, how you sell it, and how you actually build a business model as well. So when I work with clients and when I've kind of made this work in-house, to increase my chances of success, I always start with the market first, because as I've kind of alluded, the market tells you what category you're going to be working in and who you're selling to. It can also impact what your brand looks like as well. And what I'm doing here is kind of overlaying product market fit with go-to-market at the same time here. So when people talk about go-to-market, I think it's all about the launch. And the launch is possibly the smallest part of the whole process. It's actually a strategic body of work that requires all of these different components to link and work together. So if you are a business that focuses on your product first and not the customer, it would indicate that you are looking at things from a supply perspective and not a demand perspective. And this is where things go wrong. This is where you can waste money, resources, you can build things that you weren't really meant to. So this is where the headaches kind of start. Now, for the rest of the session, I will call it product market fit, but I just wanted to kind of put this slide in here just to get you to ask yourself, really, are you focusing too much on your product first? Okay, so next we're going to look into achieving product market fit and what that feels like, what it looks like. So again, I just want to stress 42% of businesses do not get to this stage. The reason for that is it is really, really tough. And once you get there, it doesn't mean that the work stops. If anything, you are now indicating to the market that you're showing signs of scalability as well. So in terms of achieving it, it's widely accepted that you need a combination of these 3 points. And this is particularly relevant if you work in tech and product as well. So the first thing you need is proof of value. And what I mean by that is you can demonstrate that you've got good retention rates, particularly within your ideal client profile. The second part is proof of monetization. So you are able to evidence that you've got paying customers and you've got your pricing structure nailed. Let's not forget that you probably iterated it or reiterated it 100 times, but you're comfortable with what you're putting to the market. It doesn't require you to over-explain things. Customers just kind of get it. And the last part is proof of value proposition, which is something known as the aha moment. And that is making sure that your product or your service or your offering is able to connect a user in a way that they realize value from the product that you're delivering. So you need, like, loosely speaking, a combination of these 3. The biggest question I get asked, or the question I'm asked most often, is how long does this process take? Okay. So I'm a marketer, so I will tell you it depends. And it depends on things such as the market, the type of problem you're solving, changes externally, the way that your customers derive value, that all this comes into play. There's a guy called Lenny Rachitsky. He was I believe, the head of product at Airbnb. He's got a brilliant podcast and a newsletter, and he did this work for me. Thanks, Lenny. God, I'm starting to crack jokes to myself now. I'm sorry. But he surveyed all these businesses to understand how long it takes to hit product market fit. Now, this is kind of like a condensed version. If you search for it, you'll see kind of some of the timelines. He does dig into industry types and business models, but just a few examples here. So Netflix took 18 months to get to product market fit. Airbnb took 2 years. Amplitude took 4 years. Figma took 5 years. Miro didn't get their first paying customer until year 2. And Airtable's first customer didn't come in until year 4. So again, if things are taking longer than you're expecting, and if you're doing things properly, we've got the evidence to show that everybody else is feeling the pressure, and it does take time. A bit closer to home, the recruitment tech business that I worked in, they achieved product market fit in just over 2 years as well. So let's say you've achieved it, or you're thinking that you're getting to that stage. What are some of the signals? Like, what does it feel? So the first one is customers naturally gravitating towards your product. And what I mean by that is the demand for what you offer is great. People are referring your product or service to others. Word of mouth is good. But crucially, it's not a tough sale. You don't have to over-explain what you do. People just get your value propositions. That's the first kind of thing. The second signal is the intensity of this call that's coming in, right? And this intensity is dependent on 2 factors: the market and the type of problem that you're solving. So the first one, market. If you are operating within a niche or a small market, of course, you are likely to hit product market fit than if you were going into a more narrow market. So that's just obvious. The second one is this intensity is all to do with what problem you're solving. And ultimately that is determined by whether you are offering a painkiller or a vitamin as well. The dynamics are very different. And the last one is you're just learning heaps, right? So I've mentioned that it's an ongoing process. This is not linear, it's a squiggle. It might actually be more of a drunk squiggle. But if you kind of think that you are facing lots of setbacks, you're tired all the time, but you're learning loads, and you're learning loads from your customers and constantly having to change your product, that means that you are actually absorbing yourself within this as well. And as I mentioned, you don't just hit it, there's always moving goalposts. Just to give you an idea, when I work with my clients, an initial engagement might be about 12 weeks. I'll then hand over a body of work, and the clients that make it work will usually spend between 6 to 12 months in ramping up that activity and then turning it into a business model. So we've kind of looked at what's involved, how long it takes, what the signals are like, what does the process actually look like. So here I'd be tempted to ask, like, how you guys are kind of approaching this in your own business. Is there anyone that wants to kind of just tell me, like, loosely how they're approaching going to market in this kind of way? I'm happy to carry on if I've got no willing. Oh, okay, Charles has got his hand up.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, sorry, I was going to say earlier, when you're saying, like, how do you know if you've got product market fit? I think someone said to me once that you can read as many books or poetry about love as you want, but you can never really understand it until you've experienced it. And I think for me, I've read every single startup manual, and I've been a complete sucker for book recommendations, but I think it's only in the last few months, maybe 6 months, that I've gone, oh, wow, that's different. And I think that's been a kind of big realization, and a lot has kind of clicked into place now for us. So I think for us, what we're doing, we think we understand the ICP, and I think now we're trying to go deeper into that and trying to understand the various personas that we're seeing. And the question we're asking during discovery call is, the customer tells us like what they're doing today, we show them the product, they get excited by it, and then we kind of talk about what the value is to them. And then we say right at the end of the call, like, so, what if you do nothing? Like, what if you just keep going as you are now? Like, why would that be a problem for you? And that's usually the question that gets us the kind of the answer to the business case. And like we had one like just last week where the person we were speaking to said we can't keep going as we're going because we keep losing people, and like the more people we lose, like it's like a big amount of time before we can get some new in and get them up to speed, and we're getting them further and further behind. Something's got to change. Yeah, it's like bingo. Now we've got something we can build a business case with. But that's kind of where we're at. We're like getting into like there's a different personas, the different reasons that people tell us that they need what we're offering, and then we're trying to figure out like the sales process and how to get better at that, like post discovery.
Yeah, no, that sounds bang on. Out of interest, who within the business is conducting the audience discovery piece?
Me.
And are you like CEO? Are you sales?
Yeah, I'm founder and CEO.
Yeah, cool. Okay. No, it's interesting because I always like to kind of follow up with what kind of blockages are you finding? But like you say, you've noticed that you're talking to people who currently you're trying to understand which almost like problem you want to solve and find out who resonates with it. And it is interesting because I'll speak to some people and they give this body of work to sales. And usually I'll recommend not to even let sales look at this because there'll be a tendency to turn it into a sales conversation rather than a problem validation question. But no, like everything that you've just said there, Charles, like absolutely makes sense. And it's reassuring because it's going in the direction that I'm going to be taking the rest of the workshop as well. So thank you so much for sharing, Charles. Okay, so I've got a couple of volunteers in the room that I will pick on in a minute, but I'll carry on. But like as Charles said, we're kind of looking at this part of the process, okay, from idea to traction. Monetization, yes, we are looking at pricing, but we're not really kind of digging into that part of this process, okay? What I'm going to do is just talk you through kind of the 7 steps that when I go into this phase, what I do and what I'm looking out for and what I'm trying to listen to. And it'd be interesting to see if this resonates with what you're currently doing. So it all begins with this idea of the problem. So articulating the problem that you believe you are trying to solve. And you don't just have one problem. It's likely that you might be looking to solve 2 or 3. And what you would do is write up a problem statement, okay? What you're trying to do is find people that this problem resonates with, and they have a high level of urgency to solve it and a low ability to do it themselves. So next up, we've got to find where these people live. So this is where we look at segments. The sweet spot is between 3 to 5, especially if you work within B2B. And after you've identified the customer segments, now becomes the process of surveying and interviewing people. So what I would recommend is every segment, you need to survey 20 people and you need to interview 10 people. And the reason why those numbers are kind of suggested is that that's when patterns start to come through. And if you use particular scripts that might follow theories such as the jobs to be done theory, and it's proven that patterns will start coming out and you'll start to see clusters. By talking to people in this way and understanding how they're currently trying to solve the problem, you're going to also learn how they research and buy products that might help them to solve. So all of a sudden, you're going to be opening conversations up around marketing channels. There are 20 or 30 different channels. From this information, you'll be able to very quickly whittle down the 2 or 3 channels that people use. Again, we're being general here, but we're just kind of looking to reduce that overwhelm. We're also going to uncover things like who the true competitors are. There are 3 different types of competitor: direct, indirect, and replacement. And this information will be really useful because when you've collected this bulk of work, you're going to be in a better position to decide which competitor you are best placed to take on. Okay. When we've compiled all of this information, and I realize I'm making this kind of like really fluffy because this requires a lot of work, and we will be going into things like problem matrices a bit later. But when you've got this information, then you need to categorize it in a way to then decide which ideal segment you're going to be going after. So you can use problem matrices that allow you to kind of score, but very quickly it should be jumping off the page who you should start kind of targeting and validating. At this point, if you are right at the beginning, be aware of pricing, but also be aware that you are unlikely to get paying customers at this point. If that's the case, I would suggest always looking for people that show commitment. So it's known as when people vote with their time. So somebody is happy to jump on a call, happy to share an opinion about what your product offers, as long as they're relevant. That's a really good indicator of commitment. What sometimes I'll do as well is, particularly if I'm working in B2B, I'll try and find 5 customers that I can build this MVP solution around. That makes it easier from a traction and case study perspective. But if you are looking to get some form of investment or build a business case to continue this work, having those kind of 5 clients makes it a little bit easier. We also do user testing. I never recommend more than 5 or 6 iterations from user testing at this point. Reason being is it's a cliche. You would have read it in one of your books, Charles. If you release something that's perfect, you've released it way too late as well. Okay, so this is an ongoing process. And then we finish with the soft launch. So I say soft launch because you are going to have multiple different launches as you learn more and more about the process. This diagram, I think, helps consolidate those 7 steps and gives you a bit of a timeline as well. So you'll notice that there are some activities in this process that are always constant. So interviews and surveys, you never stop that, okay? You don't interview 10 people and go, do you know what, I'm done, I'll build it now. Okay, it's an ongoing process. What I find quite interesting here, or what I like to kind of really like draw out and show people, is where things like wait lists kick in, because you don't just build your product and then distribute it. You need to build your distribution arm at the same time that you build the product. But yeah, hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of the activities that you kind of need, but also a bit of a timeline as well. Common mistakes then. So a couple are painfully obvious, but I still see this all the time. So the biggest one is focusing on too many segments, going way too broad. I know it's an extreme case, but I had a client last year. He had developed a calendar app. He was based in Philadelphia. And when I said, who is your target market? What have I been brought on to kind of do here? He said, anybody that can speak English. We know that that's an extreme case here, but if you are going into the green sector, sustainability, that is still too broad. You're going to have to think about ways to kind of compartmentalize and kind of dig into the different niches as well. The second mistake going into this process is listening to fans and not people that actually pay. So when I worked for the startup based here in Cardiff, it was called Career Cake, we had so many fans. People loved it. They would tell us that they loved it. But every month we would kind of look at revenue coming in, and it didn't quite match up with the hype. And it's very easy for us as founders or as people that are building our own products to kind of naturally gravitate towards people that tell us that they love it. But just bear in mind, who is the person that's actually going to part with the cash here? Not being open-minded. This is an interesting mistake because it can come under like 2 different guises. So the first one is going into this process and being too rigid about how much you're going to sell something for, or what features you're going to include, okay? So if you go in and say, no, it needs to be sold for this, I don't know if this process is going to work. Not being open-minded also about where the research tells you. So you might start this process thinking that you are going to sell to this particular segment. As you're validating, as you're learning about people, it might actually take you to a different sector. And you've got to be open about that, because if you want to build a business model, you might need to realize that you need to reposition as well. So just be open-minded. And then thinking it's all about the launch. I will mention this about 15 more times as well, okay? But it's just making sure that you've kind of got this body of research. So what I'm going to do now, clearly it's not a very formal exercise, but what I want to do is just get a feel for what you've kind of picked up, but also what you know for product market fit working in your businesses every day. What it looks like if we align it to different stages of the customer journey, okay? So I've kind of put this canvas up here. So down this side, we've got the metrics that kind of fall within the customer journey. If you have ever come across pirate metrics, that's what we're listing here. These are the metrics that very high level you would apply to an established tech or product-led business. So everything from acquisition all the way down to referral. And then next to this, we've got two categories: poor product market fit, good product market fit. And what I want you to do is spend about 5 or 6 minutes filling in what acquisition looks like if you have poor product market fit, and what it looks like if you have good product market fit. What I'm going to do is just give you that kind of first example of what I'm hoping you'd be able to pull out from this. So what does acquisition look like if you have poor product market fit? Well, we've covered the fact that it can be slow, really expensive, difficult to engage with people. Perhaps it's difficult to kind of explain what your value proposition is. But if you have good product market fit, you have increased levels of word of mouth. It's efficient, it's easier to acquire customers, a lot easier. So these are kind of like the topics I'd like you to just like spend some time just having a think about. Anybody need me to go through what the metrics stand for or what they are in more detail? I'm happy to.
Is activation activation, does that mean? I don't know what it means, but what does it
Yeah,
mean?
no worries. And do you know what, there's so much different language as well. So if we just start, so acquisition is how people are discovering your product. Activation is, are people taking the actions that you want them to? Retention is, are your activated users engaging with the product in a way that you expect? Revenue or monetization is, are your ideal clients actually paying for your product, and are they coming back? And then referral, are people telling others about it? And if they are telling others about it, is it kind of in a good way? So if I give you like 5 minutes, I'm not going to make you share your findings or anything, but it'd be interesting just if you're comfortable, just kind of jotting some details down, and also maybe drawing on some of your experiences, what this looks like as well. Cool. I'll set a timer. I was just remembering that was on. I was going to have a drink of water. Like a really big water gulp with my microphone. Promoted is the one that's happening right now. I don't know. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Do you know how many people were meant to be going to the one? Mhm. Give you one more minute if that's all right. Oh wait, was I just wearing that for fun? Okay. Cool, right, should we jump back in? Are you guys happy if we carry on?
Yeah.
Yes, cool, okay. Anyone happy to share with me what they think from a core product market perspective, what activation might look like? I'll make it easier. I'll make it easier for everyone. Stop talking at me, guys. So poor product market fit. We are looking at it through the lens of activation. Then people aren't coming back after the trial. People don't understand it. From a retention perspective, churn. I think that's probably the kind of the biggest message there. Revenue, a really good example of poor product market fit in relation to this is I work for a business where people just kept on asking for discounts. The sales kind of cycle was getting longer and longer. That's how that can look like as well. And things like referral, so negative feedback and low NPS scores as well. From a good product market fit perspective then, so again, let's look at activation. It's simple to sign up. People realize what they need to do. There's that value realization, that aha moment kicks in. From a retention perspective, we're looking at the curve and it's flattening, but it's flattening at the right kind of percentage. Revenue, I mean, it's obvious, it's profitability, and referral. The main kind of sign that I see is things like referral schemes working as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Again, this is kind of just very, very loose, but hopefully you can possibly look at where you are with your businesses and work out where you might potentially need to improve on things. Okay, so I'm going to go on to, if everyone's happy, we'll go on to the kind of the third stage then, so exploring market validation strategies. So as I mentioned, this is based on the work of Brian Balfour. He actually runs a resource called Reforge. It's full of a number of templates, learning materials for people looking to validate and scale their tech businesses as well. But a lot of the work that he did for this was when he was working in-house for HubSpot, and he was on the team that developed their Sidekick products, which at the time was revolutionary because it allowed salespeople to send emails or proposals, and they were immediately alerted by this in-app notification to say such and such has opened your proposal. So that's where this kind of stalkerish aspect came from. But these are kind of the steps that they use to then validate that particular product. Okay, so the first one then, we've mentioned it before, so we're kind of going in easy, the leading indicator survey. So this is the one where the measure of success is if over 40% of people respond very disappointed when you kind of propose the idea of taking away your product or service, and it means that you have quote unquote product market fit. Does anybody use this currently within any of their, no, David? Anybody online? Cool, okay. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious you can't build a business around this, okay? We implemented this when I worked for an online learning platform. Every single month we would fire this email out and the scores were amazing. We had like 50, 60, 70% of people saying that they would be gutted if we were to take our online learning videos. But then you'd look at the end of the month and go, well, we're not making any money. So there's clearly something wrong with this. And in terms of applying it then, so I recommend emailing this out and asking your questions on a regular basis, but just bear in mind who you're asking. So when we kind of looked into it, we realized that we were asking the fans, the people that loved it, but not the people that were necessarily spending. The people who were spending, they were the ones that the value proposition didn't quite sit. So that's where we saw the work was needed to be done. We, when we first went to market, we were operating within universities. So we hit a certain threshold where we had got in front of a number of universities, and according to these stats, we had product market fit again. But again, if you are going in and you were using this within a very small market, you're obviously going to reach threshold much sooner than if you'd gone into a more kind of larger market as well. So just bear those in mind. The biggest learning that I had from this is our business model was B2B and B2B2C. So we would sell into HR managers or head of student bodies, but it was actually the students and the young professionals that were consuming the content. So that can also be known as a two-sided marketplace, where to get your business working, you need both kind of levels, both stakeholders, sorry, were getting value for. Sorry, I blatantly just saw Gino and he's just thrown me off my script. But yeah, sorry guys. But the idea then is that if you have two different stakeholders, so in this case, I had the employer and the young person consuming the content, you need to make sure that both of them are getting value as well. So it is worth using this and interviewing both types of stakeholders, because it might help you to rethink what value means to each side of the audience. The second one then is leading indicator engagement data. Sounds very thrilling, I know, but it can be incredibly tempting to report on things like number of signups and the number of people that log in on day 3. That, unfortunately, whilst is useful from some perspective, it doesn't actually tell you whether people are getting meaningful value from your actual product, okay? And what we need to do is look at the data in a way that aligns to see if people are actually able to do the job that they need it to be done. Is it actually alleviating pain? So again, I'm picking on Career Cake here. We started by looking at active users, people completing basic tasks, but it wasn't until we looked at them completing workflows, that's when we realized where the value was coming from us. So engagement data for us was finding people who logged in, created a playlist, added 10 titles, watched the content for, I think it was like 200 minutes in total. That for us was an indicator that they were going to come back and renew their subscription the following month as well. So just have a think about what that data looks like. Also, don't nick the engagement data of another business that isn't aligned to where you are as well. I'm aware that I'm making a fool of myself, but I said to you that I was going to share every kind of mistake that we went through. So Career Cake was an online learning platform. You would log in, you'd be able to watch, I think there was over 100 different videos helping you to upskill within the workplace. We went into a meeting once and were struggling with which metrics or which engagement data to report on. So we came up with this idea, well, let's use the stats that Spotify use. And I know it's daft, but the biggest learning from that is understanding the context of which people use your product. So I'm a Spotify user, I use it every day, it's in the background, it's just there. If I look at the ideal user of Career Cake, they have possibly just lost their job or they are going for a promotion. There's probably about 2.5 days worth of intense learning. They probably don't need my product any longer than 3 months because that's matched or aligned to the recruitment cycle. So the contexts are completely different. So if we were to use the stats that Spotify uses, well, in theory, we don't have a business model as well. So I know that that's a painfully obvious point, but it is really easy to kind of, I call it shiny object syndrome. It's very easy to kind of go, oh, we should be doing that. Just think about the context that your business is in, but also the stage as well. The third part of this is all around retention data. So if you are in the process of working towards product market fit, your emphasis needs to be on retention, not new leads. You need to sort out the retention piece here. And it's not a case of just recording churn and thinking that you're done. So I was working with a client last year. Their turnover was about 5 million and they work within the sales dashboard market. Everything was saying that they had product market fit. They felt busy. They weren't able to work on the product. Their turnover is great, but the retention data looked a bit squiffy. So it wasn't until we actually looked at this and interrogated it by cohort, we realized actually there are some client profiles that aren't realizing value that are pulling this number down. And there are some that are artificially kind of pushing up higher. So when you look at your retention data, yes, look at it as a whole, but also look at it from a cohort base as well, the type of customers that are going in and using your platform. The way that you can use that, just as a side note, we realized that we needed to devise a different onboarding process and we needed to reconfigure which features came in at certain points as well. And then this is kind of the last one then, the trifecta or the power of 3. And this is all around the fact that you know that your business is going well when you have 3 highline indicators that kind of, when they combine, you know that you've reached product market fit. The best case study on this is actually Snapchat, and their trifecta was made up of non-trivial top line growth, which to me is 200,000 downloads a day. They also had good retention, so 50% of their downloads were active daily. And then meaningful usage. So for Snapchat, that was all around the fact that users weren't just coming back daily, they were taking a meaningful action. So for them, it was sending 10 pictures a day on average. So it's kind of like that nice combination. If you are in a product-led business, you might want to look at things like distribution, adoption, expansion, but ultimately it's the combination between these kind of 3 stats that help validate whether you've got product market fit. Now, if you are new to this, what I won't go into it now, but what I would suggest is looking into something called the North Star metric. And that is a unit of value that indicates that a customer is getting value from your product. You might be a little bit too early stage for that, but if you look into it, you'll notice that you've got the North Star metric at the beginning, the top rather, and to achieve that you need drivers, you need kind of business functions to then support it. So just kind of look into it, but I think the point here is the fact that it's around this kind of power of 3. Okay, right, we're on the last section now, which is around customer feedback methods. If everyone's cool, I'll carry on with it. Yeah. Okay, so this is the one that I see kind of people getting the most value if you are right at the beginning of this process. And that's because it's all around kind of testing your proposition. So the main areas are the problem and who to prioritize the problem, audience discovery, which is the interview part, MVPs, and also user testing. This is the most important slide I'd like to think out of this entire workshop. Okay, it's a quote by Peter Drucker. So people rarely buy what your company thinks it's selling. Okay, so as startup founders, as people working within the business, we are obsessed with what we're working on, right? And there are also some crazy people amongst us that think that customers live and breathe our brands, when in reality, that is not actually the case. And if we come from this perspective, that means the product, the marketing, the sales that we create, again, is coming from our perspective. So supply and not demand. And that's where kind of the misalignment comes from. So the first way then you can kind of reduce that then is to really dig into this concept of the problem and who you're solving it for. So we know one of the biggest mistakes is going too broad, but if you don't focus at this stage, you're going to spread yourself a bit too thinly, and you might find that you run out of run rate to be able to actually validate this particular product as well. So I'd mentioned it earlier, if you work in green tech, if you work in sustainability, there are going to be nuances. There are going to be different types of customers. We don't all act and buy in the same way. So this is the kind of second thing that I'd like you to spend some time just thinking about. And this is the problem market canvas I'm going to introduce you all to. So this might be a refresher for some. It might be kind of an opportunity to almost put together kind of some scoring behind your thinking. But the particular map that I'm going to show you is created by a lady called Maya Voig. She is a go-to-market strategist, and she found a way to help you kind of put a scoring system and give you kind of that priority focus. So very high level, this is, don't worry, I will go into the specifics. This is what we're looking at. And this is what I would recommend you complete. So down this section here, we've got the segments. So the segment is the target customer you believe that you're able to sell your offering to. And I'm not just saying green sector, I'm saying head of sustainability within a private sector organization that has 200 members of staff that uses X. So you've got to be kind of that granular. This is where your buyer personas go in. And along the top is the problem that you believe you're solving. So as I mentioned, you're not solving one. You can kind of look at it from an overall perspective, but there are going to be different ways that you can position your problem as well. If we zoom in on one of those particular panels, oh, Charles has got a question.
Yeah, I got a question. So we've got two well, I guess what you call segments here that we think we've identified. We call them kind of clusters.
Yep.
So basically, marketing to chief sustainability officers, kind of anywhere. So we're making a mistake there, I guess. But I guess in terms of the leads that we get coming through, we get kind of two clusters. One is in real estate supply chain, and the other one is in the energy sector supply chain. So those are sort of the two clusters. And then what we're finding when we're doing discovery interviews is that we end up with these different, what we call personas. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but basically what we do is we're going to go through the exercise of asking them what their pain is. And some people, their pain is, you know, the answers they give to customers are inconsistent. That puts revenue at risk. Sometimes it's about efficiency. Sometimes I mentioned like staff attrition, like I told you earlier. So we're kind of mapping out those personas at the moment. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, could there be a one-to-one ratio between those kind of pain personas back to segment? I.e., like if we get this right, if I get our ICP definition nice and granular, would it be the case that every single chief sustainability officer of a French energy company will have exactly this pain, and therefore we would target them? Or would we still find that if we have like French energy sector head of sustainability, the pain that they're likely to get is potentially one of two or three things?
I think based on what you've said, and again, kind of very high level, you would go into this exercise with kind of French energy scenario that you mentioned. You score this, because at this point it's hypothesis. You are trying to validate whether the scoring that you think resonates. But in terms of opening up that buyer persona or ideal client profile even further, experience would tell me that you will then find different nuances based on the technology or the workflow or the customers that they have as well. So this is kind of like from a general perspective that starts this process, but there will be nuances between those different classes that you said as well. Does that answer what you asked? Sorry, I couldn't. The sound was a bit funny.
Yeah, well, I guess what you're describing is where we're at, is that we thought we'd gone through this exercise a year ago, and now we're finding that we really are struggling. The problem is the same, as in like the solution is the same. I think we found like we got to the point where it's a common product that we're selling to all of these different people. But I guess what we're finding is that the reason that they're buying is different. And we are trying to kind of go through this exercise one more time to see if we can kind of refine down our ICP. And certainly investors haven't really liked. I mean, basically what I've kind of done, this kind of, you know, it's either energy supply chain or it's real estate supply chain. In investor pitches, I basically just kind of made it simpler and just said, oh no, our ICP is real estate supply chain. And they've nodded their heads and gone, okay, great. But the reality is it's a little bit more complicated than that, because we're getting leads coming in from these two different clusters.
Yeah, no,
maybe I could take it up with you after the session and just
more than happy to. I think where my head's going there is it almost sounds like you're in the kind of midst of doing this exercise. You have an idea of the problem, you've got leads coming in. There would be another framework that I would recommend. Have you heard of the jobs to be done framework?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so ultimately that's what I would then use when I'm farther along from this process to understand why they buy and how you then deliver the proposition based on how someone has bought previously, the messaging that kind of resonates, the forces that push them forwards and backwards. But if we take that in a separate conversation, again, like what by the sound of it, how you are going into this is exactly the way that I would recommend it, understanding the nuances between the different clusters.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. No, thanks, Charles. So just to kind of build on this. So again, you would have heard Charles and I kind of just digging into how you might apply this. But if you take this kind of canvas, then you are looking at a segment here. And what we want you to do is consider the segment and consider how that segment experiences problem number one. So just looking for a sentence here, and I would put that in that kind of like context part. And then underneath, I want you to score different elements of it. So in relation to this person experiencing this problem, how painful is it for them? So 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. The next thing I want you to consider is how easy it is to sell to this kind of person. Okay, be realistic there, by the way, based on your existing business knowledge. And then the last one is, out of 10, how easy is it to implement your solution? Okay, so if I just ask you to kind of look at 2 problems in 2 segments, or kind of just build on what you're already doing if you're using something like this. But if I can give you kind of 5-6 minutes to kind of think very high level what this looks like for yours and what those scores look like, because ultimately what we're trying to do is find the highest score to then understand who you would then kind of prioritize the work for. So just to kind of recap then, list the 2 problems that you believe you're solving, the 2 segments you're going after, score the pain, the ease of sell and the ease of implementation, and then we can kind of just have a look at the kind of prioritization. I will go back to this one though, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking for. Cool. So I just give you 5 minutes. Yeah. I've got like a couple of survey questions and stuff that you could send to your engaged users and non-engaged users and just see if, yeah, something comes through.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Simply notation. I think one more minute and then we'll jump in if that's all right with everyone. Right. Are you guys all right if I jump back in? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. If everyone's happy, we'll go through. Anybody willing to or happy to kind of share what they found going through this process? Like, has it potentially, if you're working in a group, has it maybe showed some misalignment with the problem that you think you're solving?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
So what I found was actually what I thought was that we've got two segments, quite clear segments, two target customers, I guess.
Yep.
And the product does two things, and quite clearly it serves one segment, just one of the problems, and it serves the other segment, both of the problems.
Okay.
Yeah, so just what I thought, but
yeah. What about in terms of like selling to the segments? That are they different or do they follow largely the same?
Largely the same, I'd say. It's quite a narrow targeted sort of audience segments. Yeah. I
mean, I think your isn't your app the Albert?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. So and my guess is it's kind of shaped very nicely because you experienced that problem yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the problems is gaining Albert certification more easily, more cost effectively, and but the second one is getting accurate data. Okay. So the broadcasters are one of the segments, and production companies are another segment. For the production companies, their initial first kind of problem is getting Albert certification, but the bigger production companies, they also want that accurate data.
Okay.
But the broadcasters, they don't need to get Albert certification. They're mandating the Albert certification, but they need the accurate data. So that's where the accurate data works for broadcasters.
Yeah.
But they're both still quite targeted audience, aren't there? There's probably only like 8 to 10 broadcasters in the country. 1,000 production companies, but still that's still quite narrow, I would say, compared to English speaking people or whatever.
Well, that was the experience. But it's interesting because like you say, once you even if you work within a niche, once you've kind of not sorted it, but you know,
Yeah.
kind of and you're comfortable. If you then use something called beachhead analysis, you then start finding segments that are similar and they have similar traits. So it might not be Albert for food manufacturing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's thinking about that scalability in different sectors and things like that. But
Yeah.
for the moment, I'm just focusing. Yeah.
Yeah, nice one. Cool, thank you. Right, okay, so what I just want to do now is just touch on audience discovery. So I'm not going to make you run interviews. That is literally a separate workshop. But I just want to reinforce some of the things to listen out for if you're not currently, because I think that there is a tendency to talk to customers or potential customers and be a little bit biased, or listen to people that aren't actually going to go on and pay for your service. There are some people that don't like talking to customers because they're shy, they don't know what to ask. There are a number of companies that I've spoken with that won't talk to their customers because they're worried it's going to remind them to cancel their subscription as well. So there is a whole thing going on here, okay? But it is proven. And the Aberdeen group did a research paper on this, that people that speak to customers and they speak to them regularly see a 54% greater return on investment from their marketing alone. And they're able to, in some cases, speed up their sales cycle by up to 56%. So there is some method to this madness. When you are going into audience discovery, the aim of it is ultimately to dig into someone's buying timeline. So I've mentioned that kind of it's recommended that you speak to 10 people who are using your product, or if you don't have any customers, who are using a competing product, and also speaking to people that have made that purchase decision recently. So if you are working within software, that could be 6 months. If you were a dating app, it could be 24 hours. If you work with local authorities, I'll stop myself there. But the idea is that you want to speak to someone who has undergone this recently, bless you, purely because they're able to extract the information a lot more easier. And if you follow a process that is largely based on jobs to be done, which I'll talk very, very briefly in a minute, when you go into this, all of a sudden, you can start understanding things like what was happening when somebody woke up that morning and realized, I've got a problem with X, I need to sort it. You can work out who the different types of competitors are. You can also work out what minimum requirements or features you need to make someone switch from what they're currently doing to this new way. And then you can also open up things like the channels that they would use to research a proposition like yours as well. So jobs to be done, very quick show of hands. And who knows of the jobs to be done framework apart from me and Charles? That's cool. Okay. So it's a product innovation theory that was created in the 1990s by Clayton Christensen and a guy called Bob Mester. And the idea is that we don't buy things at random. We hire and we fire products and services to make progress in life, right? And it all is based on something called the struggling moment. And if you follow the interviewing techniques of jobs to be done, you can actually pinpoint the buying timeline from when someone wakes up and realizes that moment that they need to make a change. And you can follow this timeline to the day. It's quite scary. The processes that they went through. So the channels that they used, the questions that they were asking themselves, the sites that they were using, right down to the landing pages where they read and go, is it for me? I'm not really sure. And you can understand the forces at play. So the forces that push someone towards using an app, and then maybe the things that kind of hold them back as well. So there's a kind of a whole piece there. I'm not going to go any farther into that, but I think the point here regarding audience discovery is just look at your current scripts and just work out if you are asking some of these secondary questions. Yes, you're there to validate a problem, but also if you go in under the kind of guise of customer development, audience discovery, you can open up and find these insights that are going to help you way, way later down the line. if you have built an MVP, for example, without talking to customers, and you've got an agency that's saying to you, you need this feature, you need this feature, this body of work will tell you if it's worth spending an extra 20K with an agency, for example, just gives you that level of certainty. But yeah, if this kind of approach resonates with you, jobs to be done, Clayton Christensen, there's a video, I think it's about 2 minutes, called The Milkshake Man. And it's all about how Burger King realized that they weren't competing against McDonald's, they were competing against bananas and bagels. I can see Charles has got his hand up. Hey, Charles.
Yeah, sorry to be a pain. I think it's actually called Innovating Against Luck, I think, his book, not Jobs to be Done. I know the methodology is called Jobs to be Done, but the book is called Innovating Against Luck or something like that. It's really annoying. It's a totally different name to the methodology.
Yeah, so the book is called Competing Against Luck.
Competing Against Luck, that's it.
Yeah, there's also the Innovator's Dilemma, so that's the second one. But no, you're absolutely right. There is the Jobs to be Done handbook, so that book does exist as well. And then the follow-on one is a book called Demand Side Sales. But no, you're absolutely right, and those are the titles. I am a little bit biased because Bob Mester is my client as well, and he would have picked me up on that as well. So, but yeah, no, thank you for that. But yeah, check out those books and the Milkshake Man video. It's like it's brilliant. Okay, so MVPs. Okay, so the information that you collect from your audience discovery is very, very quickly going to make you realize what actual MVP you need to build. So as you can see, there are tons of different versions. So you don't need to go out and build a beta product, okay? And this is kind of like an effective diagram. I've used it personally because all of a sudden I need to realize what level of fidelity I need to include to show someone that they get that initial hook of, oh, this will solve my problem. But then also, how many customers can I get this in front of when I am testing it as well? So we've got interviews and surveys. My favorite one, has anyone come across the Wizard of Oz MVP? So this is a really good example. So again, CreaCake started out with this, and that is, you've got a website, someone puts through an order, and it seems like you've had an automated email and someone goes, here is your product. And you're like, oh, this is wonderful. I haven't spoken to a single human. But actually, just like the film, you've got kind of that front website, and it looks like everything is working, but you've got people in the back processing, packing, running around, trying to work out what needs to be automated as well. So that is an example of an MVP. Kickstarter is, that website is probably the most famous of examples of MVPs as well. You put money in to support things and then a product is made as well. But what I'm trying to say here is that you've got all these different guises before you need to throw money at an agency or developer, because we all know that can be really kind of expensive. A couple of examples of when MVPs go right. Airbnb, probably the most famous one. Two guys think that there is a market here to kind of rent out their sofa. So they have a website, they put their sofa up to rent when, I think it was the Salesforce Dreamforce conference that was going on in San Francisco. That's all they do a number of times to validate it. They don't build this massive platform, but it doesn't always have to be tech and software apps as well. So Virgin Airlines, they actually started with their MVP looking at flights between London Heathrow and Newark. When they validated that there was interest in that, that's when they expanded the flights that they did as well. So that's kind of different guises. Examples of unsuccessful MVPs. Anyone know Quibi? Good, that was my point. So that was a bit flippant, wasn't it? So they were a mobile streaming site, and they got something like 1.8 billion in investment, and they went ahead and built the entire platform. They didn't develop an MVP, and they didn't actually speak to any customers as well. And That obviously didn't work out for them because they ran out of run rate as well. So that's an example, again, an extreme example of being a bit obsessed with the investment numbers, but not doing the hard work. Electro Loom, they're 3D printing, I think, for manufacturing. It's not a failed MVP, it's a failed experiment. They ended up having to close at one point because they developed their MVP, but they positioned it to the wrong market segment. And when I say wrong market segment, they just decided not to do any research in a kind of like closely related sector as well. So there are a couple of lessons coming through here of just, if you miss these important steps, and I know we all say that we should be doing it, but in reality, we don't always do it. Like, I'll put my hands up. Sometimes I've been that person, that it comes at a cost. From a user testing perspective then, a friend of mine referred to this as introducing the world to your ugly baby. I mean, I'm going to assume that you guys all know how to kind of do user testing as well. I think the biggest mistake that I find with this is you've got to learn to shut up. So if you go in and you kind of pick 5 clients that you want to do user testing, don't ask them to sign in, ask them to complete a meaningful action and literally just watch them. I've been in that situation where I can see people not working, they can't see the login button, and I'm just like, getting really angry. But just kind of this helps kind of speed up kind of those things that we can oversee sometimes. I put this slide in for people that don't have signs of traction. So if you are running audience discovery and you're kind of looking at this part, what are kind of those signals that suggest that there are levels of commitment if you don't have paying customers? So yes, 40 to 60% of respondents, when you're interviewing them, are saying, oh, actually, I want to learn a bit more. Beta customers, sometimes you can ask people to pay for pilot schemes as well. That's quite good to get that initial attraction. This is a good one. 75% success rate in booking customer interviews. So if you are prepping the interviews, and they are very painful because you've got to find people, you've got to recruit them, you've got to hunt them down on LinkedIn, you've got to beg them to kind of take part. But if you see that there are more people dropping out or cancelling just before, you know that the interest probably isn't there. So maybe the problem doesn't need to be solved within that segment. You can also look at things like newsletter open rates and whatnot, but that's kind of, in my opinion, kind of vanity metrics. But those are kind of some of the signals that have certainly worked for me and for some of my clients as well. Okay. It's 11:29. I'm at my summary slide. So just to recap then, we've kind of looked at what product market fit is and hopefully guiding you on kind of like that middle ground between overwhelming and a bit fluffy. We've looked at achieving product market fit. So there are those signals and that to do with feeling busy, the intensity of the pull. We've also looked at validation strategies. So again, 4 very useful steps. Don't use them in isolation. And then the last one, hopefully there's been a couple of things that you can kind of change or just reflect on how you're approaching customer feedback as well. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, it's been a bit stop and started, but hopefully there's been kind of something in there and it's kind of complemented the program to date. So I should let you talk now, Lizzie.
Amazing, thank you, Lucy. There was a lot of practical takeaways in that session. Some of the slides with the work kind of pages on them, we can like separate those as well, send them out just so you've got those to work on as well. The session has been recorded, so if you want to watch back, it will be there in the next week or so. But yeah, so Lucy's details are up there, but I'll also share them afterwards, so you've got those. If you want to get in contact with Lucy, please do. But yeah, thank you for joining, everyone, and thank you, Lucy.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone online. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.